Good evening. Welcome to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at diabloii.net. I'm your host, Flux. I'm joined tonight by MJinSpace.
Hello.
Possibly MJinSpace.
Yes.
I'm never quite sure which. And the guest of honor is Tyr.
That's me.
We had Wolfpack on the show last week, along with some other guy I've already forgotten. And what are you laughing? And he was at Blizzcon last week and told us amazing stories about not finding any developers and being shunned and who he would kill in the zombie apocalypse. Tyr was also at Blizzcon last week. He was the other one who was able to get one of our press passes, and he was able to track down some developers.
Yeah, no, I did the opposite.
Did you use a tranquilizer? Did you go with the tranquilizer dart or chloroform?
I just went with crippling social compulsion. So, basically I followed them around everywhere and would not let them leave me alone.
Good job. So we'll be talking about your developer sightings and some stuff at BlizzCon. Obviously, we talked about, and then of course the PTR is going now and patch 2.4 is online. And none of us have actually played it much because of real life, but we've all read the patch notes and we can debate some of that stuff. And there were a couple of dev interviews from BlizzCon that have showed up. One with Wyatt ducking, dodging, and avoiding like an Amazon. Some of the questions. But the crippling social compulsion here was able to track him down in real life. So we can hear what you think about that, Tyr. And some speculation about what free content forever versus another expansion. And MJinSpace will discuss how to spell his name properly.
There you go. That's my contribution.
Awesome. So anyway, Tyr, you're in Colorado, correct?
That's right.
And so I sent an email out a few weeks ago, saying, hey, who wants to go to BlizzCon? We have 2 press passes. And you were instantly me.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever been to BlizzCon before?
No, this was my first trip to the con. It was amazing.
And you had a little bit of free time, and you were like, I would love to go, and here's a free pass, and I am off.
Yeah, literally, I woke up. I think I got your email overnight. So I woke up at about 5, maybe 6 a.m., which is when my wife goes to work. And she's, about to get ready for work, hop in the shower and that kind of thing. And I looked at my phone and I was like, so this thing happened. I can't go. And she was like, you're going to go. So, I got tickets right away and headed off to California, 3 weeks later.
Boy.
You bought a plane ticket, and then you were like, okay, Blizzard hasn't sent me a confirmation email yet, and I'm leaving in 2 days.
Yeah, I literally hadn't gotten their email, I think, until the Monday prior. So, yeah, it was literally about 5 days.
Yeah, and I kept telling you, I'm talking to PR, it's cool, you'll be on the list. This happens every year. They say you can go, and then they never send you a confirmation until the last minute. Which, of course, is a little scary when you're buying plane tickets and getting hotel rooms,
yeah, right. I'm going to show up there, and they're just going to be like, nope, you're not in. You're not on the list. No soup for you.
Yeah, but and I wasn't going this year, so ordinarily I would be there and I could straighten that kind of thing out. We've had extra passes in the past, but I was in Portland. I was in a wine production facility toiling away all day, so cleaning tanks probably. It's all we do these days there. But anyway, so I wasn't. But you were able to go, so you'd never been there. Tell us, what was the first impressions, and was it exciting, and was it what you were hoping for?
Yeah, it was everything and more that I was hoping for. Part of me going out there is that Diablo and Blizzard and all their games are some of the things that I would like to do with my life. So I actually got down there. Some of the folks know that I do fantasy concept art as well. So I got to go down there and talk to their artists and do a portfolio review. And I did a million things down there that I had planned to do, and then a million things that I had no idea would happen. I don't know why, but I spent 2 hours trading for BlizzCon pins. I have a disease now. It's called BlizzCon pinitis. But yeah, I had so much fun. Can't describe it. If you've never been, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, F5 on that screen whenever they sell the tickets, this coming year, try to get out there because it's really something.
What do you think, MJinSpace? You've been to BlizzCon. I asked Wolfpack all these questions last week, so I'm just kind of curious. What are you curious about BlizzCon? Have you gone? Would you like to go? Ask him questions if you want.
No, I just love listening to people that go. I've been to tons and tons of nerd conventions, being a nerd, and I really enjoy them, even though I would never admit that to most people that I know. But if I was out there, I would go. But I'm not going to buy a plane ticket and go. I love living vicariously now. So I'm just excited to hear what you had to say. And I got to tell you, dude, you really must love your wife to death. That's a kick-ass wife. She's like, you go to BlizzCon.
Yeah, I had a wedding for one of her coworkers to attend that Sunday. So I flew out I think I left my hotel room at about 4:30 a.m. To get back because she's like, all right, you're going, but you're not missing this thing. And I was like, all right, I'll do it.
Wow, loves you and appreciates your hobbies and your dreams, but keeps you in check, man. That's a keeper. Right. Good job.
She makes a mean chili too. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it was a great experience. Like, I cannot overstate how much fun I had out there, and also how much I learned about the community and what Blizzard people are actually like in person. It's kind of incredible.
They're big nerds who have black T-shirts on, pretty much, right?
Yeah, blue actually. They were wearing blue polos in the Slaughtered Calf, so I had to laugh. So one of the things that happened to me when I was out there is I was talking to, I forget his name. I want to say it was one of the Alexes on the team, but he.
Alex Jemani?
No, not him. He was a environment designer, and I was just chatting with him about different things, and I had a couple questions. He's like, hey, maybe we should get you with one of the senior devs, on that in terms of actual gameplay. He's like, the guy behind you, he's one of the devs, and I was like, oh really? And he's literally picking up, empty what is essentially solo cups full of beer off the tables. And I laughed, and I was like, no, you're kidding, right? And he's like, no, really. So.
Wait, they had beer in the Slaughtered Cafe?
Yeah, they had a bar in there and a whole bunch of benches, kind of like picnic benches. And you could go in there, order a beer or whatever it is that you wanted, and then the dev team was in there cleaning up after everyone. It was one of the strangest things I've ever seen. I had to apologize to the guy like 6 times. I'm like, I'm really sorry, I didn't believe you were the actual game dev. I really thought he was just there helping clean up, but no, all the developers were just, taking a turn. They would, I guess, do like a couple-hour shift,
Wow, that's awesome.
So who wants to make the first joke about how the Diablo 3 developers are just picking up the trash at Blizzard these days?
I think you may have made the joke, Flux.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
We'll let them hate you, Flux.
I think they pretty much already did. Okay, so Wolfpack was there a lot, and he hung around the Slaughtered Cafe, and he wasn't able to find any devs. He was like, he'd see them, but he wasn't able to talk with them. And he was, he had this long story about, he kept trying to, and like they weren't available, and he would like talk to some artist guy for a while, but it was only about the art.
Yeah.
He really liked he played the demo. He liked the artwork of the new island level that they've added in with the new tile sets. Mm-hmm. And talked to that artist a bunch, but he wasn't able to track down any devs, and they've been elusive. And you actually were successful in this.
Yeah, I spent.
So you threw some garbage down and said, "Hey, buddy, snap, and that was it."
No, I did. I think the person I got the most time to talk to definitely was Alex Solman. I probably cornered him for the better part of an hour. I did get maybe, I'd say 10, 15 minutes with Wyatt Cheng. He looked like a deer in the headlights once I mentioned where I was from and who I worked with. So I spoke with him, and I also did briefly speak with Josh Mascara. So I kind of got, 3 of the bigger guys there, at least for a little bit of time. But it was great talking to Alex. He's actually the guy who headed up the Legendary Set Dungeons. So got a good bit of time to talk to him about that and just a whole bunch of different things.
So what did he say? That was actually a topic I wanted to get into later, but none of us have been able to play the PTR much, just to Legendary Set Dungeons in person. So what did he say was the design theme, and how hard was it to try to balance them, and then that kind of stuff? Yeah, so, the theme that they're obviously going with is they want these things to be kind of a curated experience. They're less, in fact, I think they aren't randomized whatsoever. The actual floor plans are set. And they have, specific goals for you to accomplish, which is one of the reasons that they did want hardcore characters to be able to die in these things, because the idea behind them is that they are a learning process. You go in, you try it, you're like, okay, that didn't quite work out, but really the only way to reset them is to die and fail out and go back in and try again. They want you to be able to experiment in that way and learn how to do the dungeon. So, they also, the big idea behind those is that they're one more different thing to do, at the end of your game when you're just grinding Paragon, you're already kitted out and all that kind of stuff.
And obviously the sets have a great lore behind them that they wanted to kind of explore, and it teaches you something as well about how to run with those sets. It seems like they are probably gearing them towards being intermediate in difficulty. They don't want them to be super, super hard because they want these to kind of teach people a little bit about the nuance of how to use builds based on those sets. So that, I think, is probably a good idea. He did say he did get a little bit of controversial feedback on, hardcore characters being able to die in those and then come back. So that might be an interesting topic for discussion. But
yeah, that came up in a news post, and of course we mentioned it on the podcast last week. And people who are not hardcore, whenever there's a vote about should hardcore die forever, like in PvP back in the day, that was a whole debate, or set dungeons. Everybody who doesn't play hardcore is always of the opinion that, yes, you should die forever in hardcore. So it's kind of hard to get a legitimate debate about this. It's like having a debate about like the fate of the New York Yankees amongst Boston Red Sox fans or something.
Sure.
You get people who hate, people who don't do X, and then people who do it, like, hey, what do you think about this? And yeah, they should all suffer, they should all die in a fire, basically.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, to kind of to his point, it seems like the set dungeons are built in such a way that they're more like a puzzle to solve with perfect execution than they are a continuous level to try to grind through, by gearing well before you go in. It would be kind of like if you made a game like, say, Super Meat Boy. I don't know how familiar either of you are with that, but something that has a set level layout where you're solving a puzzle, but at the same time you're also trying to perfect your execution of, the movement required to get through it. And if you just made a permanent death mean that you failed forever and you'd never be able to go back, it wouldn't be a very positive experience. So I think it makes sense on my end, at least.
Well, what do you think about that, MJinSpace? I mean, I play mostly hardcore, so I have an opinion on that, but I'm wondering, do you play hardcore these days? And what do you think about the no permanent death for hardcore in set dungeons?
No, I actually play mostly softcore, and I think that it's totally fine. Like, I'm the opposite, which is, I don't do it, and yet at the same time, I see the point that Tier is making, and I see the point that the devs were making. I mean, my actual opinion is I think the players are smart enough and have strong enough gear that they think they're setting up this really clever thing that people are going to have to figure out how to do and this and that. But I bet you some people are just going to walk in and just hose it. They're just going to do it. It's going to be one thing that, okay, I'm done. I did it. It's checked off all the possible, what would you say, the different quests or things you're supposed to do inside the dungeon got done. So I doubt it's going to be as difficult or tricky as they think it's going to be. For some players, maybe for others it will be, but I bet it's going to be content that gets ripped through pretty quick.
Sure.
But the hardcore part, I don't think that's an issue. I think that's good. It gives hardcore players a place to experiment and have some fun because, man, I've died in hardcore in some pretty frustrating ways, and everybody has. It's just so yeah.
It can get
a
rough.
place where it can get rough. A place where you could have a little mistake when you're experimenting with something new might be kind of nice.
Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance to check on whether or not the content is geared for a specific, gear level on the player. Somebody who's already able to clear, say, GR45 or GR50, or whether it adjusts with torment level. I could see where if it was a set difficulty, and this would make sense for what they were going for, then you don't want to throw a hardcore player into an encounter that he can't test, at a low level and then work his way up on.
Exactly.
It would be like, well, it's a complete mystery. I have no idea where I'm at in relation to this thing,
Right.
And especially when you're dealing with something where you've got spawning monsters, maybe infinitely spawning monsters, that kind of stuff. It's like, well,
nice.
Okay, how do I get out of here? There's really no way to do it if I'm hardcore and if they keep coming at me.
Yeah.
Some of the early reports on it. I mean, Blizzard has a whole focused feedback forum thread on it. I've read a bunch of like pages of that a couple days ago. I meant to do a big post and some sort of quoting the best parts of it, but I haven't had a chance to do that yet. But people who were importing characters that were really strong said they were way too easy. They were like one-shotting everything in the dungeon. But I think the idea is that in a new season when you're just gearing up, obviously the first one or two you do will be a real challenge.
Yeah.
And you have to kill X number of monsters inside of 5 minutes, and you have to kill like all the elites using just the skill that's part of the set.
Sure.
So the one screenshot they showed was from the new Demon Hunter set, where it gives you a huge bonus to impale.
Yeah.
The shadow power set.
That's a really interesting set. I'm curious to see if that's going to be useful or not. I mean, for the damage level, I think it will be, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, and it's like a melee set, and you have to kill all the elites. The screenshot we saw said kill 8 elites in with impale. But of course, that's the only skill you'd want to use, because that's the skill that really works with your set, right? It's not like it's a real sacrifice.
Yeah, it's like, kill all the elites while only using Whirlwind as a Whirlwind Barbarian.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's what I'm doing anyway.
I don't have any other skills, nothing else does damage.
Yeah, that's like the legend says, only have sex with your penis. It's like, well, that's kind of my only choice, right? So, okay, I guess there are other choices. But in this case, yeah. But yeah, so that's not a real thing, but that's what you're going to be doing. But, the early requests, the early feedback was like the sets that were like super AoE stuff said the dungeons were way too easy, and the single target sets said they were like too difficult.
Sure.
So,
well, and I'm sure that'll get a tuning pass. If it's not where they want it. If that's where they want it, that's where it'll be.
But the whole thing about hardcore is, I mean, initially we had this debate about PvP forever. Then of course we got no real PvP in D3, so it's kind of irrelevant. But I was always a big proponent of they need to have non-permanent death for hardcore dueling, otherwise no one will ever do it.
Yeah, that'd be stupid. No one would ever do it if there was permanent death. That's moronic.
Well,
so, yeah.
That's what I said in repeated posts in like 2009, and there was always this huge chorus of people, most of whom never played hardcore, saying, hardcore is about permanent death. I'm like, well, okay, great, you can have that option. Maybe you can both check a box before the duel starts.
Sure, yeah.
And make it permanent, and like they get all your gear if you die. Okay, that'd be awesome.
Well, I mean, again, there's no learning curve. How do you know if you're going to be good at PvP in Diablo? If you only play hardcore and it's a permanent death situation.
Well, I agree with both of you. That seemed obvious to me, but this was a huge debate for like 2 years, and then eventually Blizzard said yes, you can do. But for these dungeons, I could totally see them saying it's permanent death in hardcore. I mean, the whole point in hardcore is you can't die. You have to learn how to play in ways where you don't die.
Sure.
And these are special challenge dungeons, and obviously, maybe give you an escape button, maybe give you an option to abort the dungeon or something. Abort and just fail. But, you're doing it, you're 30 seconds behind the time for it. It's like being a Greater Rift. I mean, when you're trying to push Greater Rifts, if you're falling behind the progress bar and you're like, I can play faster and maybe I'll die, or I can just accept that I'm not going to pass the rift this time.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I don't see why the set dungeon would be all that different than that. They're only 5 minutes long, If you're, if you need to kill 60 monsters, if you need to kill 120 monsters and you've killed 60 and you're 3.5 minutes in, you're not going to finish. So you're like, okay, I need to gear up better, I need to get better skills, I need to get better tactics, whatever.
Sure. And
that's just how I'll keep working at this until I can pass it. So I would actually have not been totally opposed to them saying there's permanent death in these, because then you just have to play a little more cautiously and it's more of a skill test.
Yeah. I think
you can't just zerg your way through it and hope for the best, right?
Yeah, my preference, I think, is the way that they've set it up, just because it seems like a better quality of life thing. It's like I can just go in there and know that, okay, well, I can learn this, I can have some trial and error, and it's not like I'm not going to be doing something with a risk of death 5 minutes later because I'm going to be running a GR 60, 65, whatever it is that I'm doing, So that's my preference, but yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Like, if they told me next week that they'd, changed it, patch notes, no, you can die in these, I'd be like, all right. It's just another valid option, but I like the way they've gone with it this way.
Yeah. Only thing I'd add is that I think there isn't enough game over right now in Greater Rifts and stuff. It'd be kind of awesome if even softcore players, like, if you died in a Greater Rift, you lost, period. It's over. Like, that would be interesting. So
that would
sweet.
Change balancing, because, then you would actually have to gear the way you normally gear for, for hardcore, so there'd be a little more parity there. But
that would be actually, I think that would be a great change to the game. Like, it would just, you die, you fail the rift, and you can't get back in, you're done. And the people that are left in the rift, even if you leave the game, they're stuck with the same level of difficulty as it was, with 4 of you in or whatever. And so they have to try to pass it. So you have to be, that would make it a little bit more serious for people, because in softcore it is kind of stupid the way people play them right now. I actually don't like it. So
if Diablo 2 had Greater Rifts, that's how it would have worked. But this is Diablo 3, so
yeah.
Yeah, the one related thing I meant to mention is that is how the set dungeons work. If people aren't aware of that, if you take fatal damage, you lose.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why it makes sense to have everybody fails it and goes back to the start if they take fatal damage.
Yeah.
So it's not like softcore players can like zerg through it and just pass it with with massive crazy play style.
Yeah.
So I guess that is kind of leveling the playing field between hardcore and softcore. Everybody fails it, but you're not dead forever.
Yeah. And that may, I hope, I bet you if it is popular, that will make it into Greater Rifts at some point. I hope it does. We'll see what happens. Maybe there'd be too much pushback.
I mean, they have the time penalty in Greater Rifts already. That seems like their solution to. But of course, a 5-second penalty for dying doesn't really exactly
It doesn't do anything. And the best part is sometimes if you're trying to pass a Greater Rift quickly and you haven't died at all, sometimes it's better to actually die and instantly come back with full resources. And especially if you're using the Convention of Elements, and since the pattern is always the same on when you come back to life on what element is going to be buffed at what time. If you're using like ice or fire, you can come back up and like it's fire or the next one, I think actually, and instantly like give everything down and with full resources. So instead of having to step back and wait like 10, 15, 20 seconds. So it was like, oh, I need to die right now. And now I finish the rift faster than if I hadn't died. That's kind of stupid. So
I think
anyway.
my only concern with these things thus far is the rewards for them, because they didn't get too specific. And I think it's really going to be just like everything in this game. If they have a proper reward for them that people want, they'll be a lot of fun to do. If not, it's going to be something everyone does once and then just back to GRs.
Yeah, back to GRs. Yeah.
What if each set dungeon you cleared added a single square to your stash? I don't mean a page. I mean literally a square.
A square. Up to your max.
If you do like 10 of those, you got an extra line, right?
Then there would instantly, boom, a bot is born. That's what would happen.
That is exactly it.
A set dungeon bot would immediately appear.
Yep. A bot is born. I like that.
How do you have 6,000 stash spaces? Explain to me, please.
Exactly. So, a couple of other general BlizzCon topics before we get more into what the devs talked about and expansion 2 ideas and stuff. Some of the stuff I asked the Wolfpack. So what other games did you check out? Did you go play Overwatch? Did you watch the Warcraft trailer? Did you smell sweaty people? What was your other experiences?
Yeah, so I was in a room full of hot farts and neckbeards. So that's just de rigueur for the day, for both days. I did play a little bit of the new WoW content, played the Demon Hunter. That was kind of fun. I think people are definitely going to get into those, but I don't really feel the need to go over them in any length here. Didn't tinker around with Heroes of the Storm because I'm not any good at it, but I did see the new content for that. Did get some fantastic seats in, I think, the third row for the opening ceremonies, so to get to see all of the announcements and the Warcraft movie trailer and the new cinematic and all that kind of stuff, and that was a total blast. As far as games played, obviously I did get a little bit of a chance on the D3 machines, and then I played a couple times on Overwatch, which that game is going to be huge.
Oh, really? Okay, I was really curious about that. Yeah, nice.
It's been said elsewhere, but they have a bona fide hit on their hands with that game.
Nice.
Okay, it is good. Really, really impressive, just in terms of the way that it works technically. It's beautiful. It runs amazingly well. The way that the UI and all that is focused is perfect, and also the team comps and the strategies and the way that each character feels unique is incredible.
Wow.
To the point where I'm gearing up to do an Overwatch podcast, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, I got to play that a couple times. I actually played that one time right next to Michelle Morrow, which was pretty great. So I got a little bit of, fame rubbed off on my right shoulder. I was sitting right next to her. But yeah, that game is going to be excellent. So that was, the majority of my playtime. Most of the time I was around, honestly, in the Slaughtered Calf. I spent a ton of time in there, just trolling around the floor, visiting people who were doing cosplay, all kinds of different stuff.
Did you, Wolfpack mentioned mercilessly abusing his press pass to cut in line for Overwatch extra playtime. Did you enjoy being able to zoom to the front of demo line?
Well, here's the thing. They wouldn't let me cut into the standard line out on the floor. So they had the press machines, up in the extra press area on the second floor. And that I used 3 times. So I got to go and play 3 times on Overwatch, and it's a much shorter wait, believe me, than waiting in line for 2 hours to get onto a machine. But if he was allowed to cut in onto the regular machines that the congoers were able to access, I'm a little jealous of that, because that probably would have even been faster.
Usually they let you go in the back entrance where the exits
and I did that, and I was like, oh, okay, so I'm media. Do I get in here? And the guy's like, no, the media machines are upstairs.
No, it does vary from year to year. Sometimes there's no machines upstairs, or only a few, or some games don't have machines upstairs. So
sure, and God knows if just the guy I talked to that one time was misinformed and he could have let me in or something. I don't know, but I got my fill playing it. I am waiting to get in the beta at some point, because man, it's so much fun.
Yeah, I've been checking for that beta. I signed it up for it right away, but now that I'm just going to go ahead and probably order the game, because I believe you, and there hasn't been a really, really good, solid, well-designed FPS, in my opinion, for quite a while. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Did you play Team Fortress 2 at any point?
Oh, yes, I did, and it's like
this
I feel like
track.
Nice. Okay, that's what I've been waiting for. That's awesome.
So good, and the lore and all that kind of stuff. I love the universes that Blizzard builds.
And
this is some of their best work, and they're not even building this for story. It is a dedicated first-person shooter. You shoot things on a map until you either capture a point or drive a bomb into a payload spot and everything blows up. That's it. But the universe that they're starting to craft, and I think it's just Chris Metzen can't help himself. Is so much fun to play in.
Good.
Yeah, the story's on the website. I mean, it's not even in the game, so.
Yeah, and they're doing, I guess, some animated shorts and comics, which I think is a really great move, because after watching that, cinematic trailer that they released last year, I'm like, can I just have that movie, please? Because I would really just like that movie.
Yeah. And, well, we did see that movie. It was this summer, and it had dinosaurs in it, and they ran around and destroyed people in a theme park.
Right, yeah.
But it had the exact same characters of the sulky older brother in the hoodie and the younger brother who was eager to see everything. It was eerily similar.
Yeah. So. Oh man, it was absolutely Blizzard Pixar. That
I like how a minute ago you said Afterwatch. I'm pretty sure that'll be the sequel, right?
Afterwatch.
Said after watching the Seek trailer, I'm like, Afterwatch. There you go. That's obviously Overwatch Part 2 is called Afterwatch.
Yeah, I actually went out and grabbed the domain for Under-Watch. I was like, I can use
Underwatch?
This.
You nerd.
I have plans for this.
I think it's really interesting that you had such a vastly different experience than Wolfpack. I mean, it sounds like you both went to the same place, and you were able to talk to devs, and he wasn't, and he was able to cut in line and to play Overwatch in a different way than you are. It's like, wow, you've got the same place, and your experience is so different.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, there was so much that I didn't get to do that I wanted to do, but even so, the amount of stuff that I got to do that I never planned on, never thought would happen, more than made up for it. I sat in on, I think, 3 panels total. I went to the Overwatch panel, I went to the Diablo 3 panel, obviously, and the opening ceremonies. I had planned to go to a whole ton of them, but in the end, there was just so much other stuff that will grab your attention. It's at the point now where I think even if they went to a third day, you wouldn't be able to get in everything that you wanted to do.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah, you can always kind of like watch the panels on YouTube afterwards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas or else the information will get written up on fan sites and stuff.
Sure.
But, you can't wait in line to play demos, or I mean, did you go to the Blizz Store and get like $500 on merchandise?
Yeah.
Because there's people like
I'm so ticked. So as I mentioned earlier, I have the Blizzard collector's pinitis, and you get one of the pins, a gold Mercadin, for spending $100 or more in the store. So I go down there.
Jesus Christ, and that is, I can see Bobby's eyes glowing from here.
Right? And I'm honest with myself. I'm like, listen, I'm going to spend the $100 anyway.
Oh my God.
Let's just do this. I mean, I'm out here. This is the only time I've ever been to BlizzCon. I'm doing it up. So, I bought a bunch of different stuff. I bought an art book and, the shirt and little pins and different, like bottle openers and stuff like that. But when I left, I looked through the bag and I was like, "Where's my golden pin, bitches?" and they were out of them. They had sold out like on day one. I was in there in the afternoon.
Okay, that's just wrong. So it's like a collect. You have to get there early to spend $100 to get a pin. That is just wrong on so many levels.
How insane is that? And then of course you got the regular pins, which are $5 a piece, and people are just trading madmen. You would have thought that I was in like the black market. There's a little area in the Dark Moon Fair down there for just pin trading. It was stupid.
They should call it like the Silk Road, Silke, because they have the extra E to the Dark Moon, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the Silky Road. It's only for pin trading.
But, hey, listen, I got a gold Vala, guys, so it's okay.
Yeah, there's a guy there with like a bucket full of like one special pin. These are $10 a piece. Who wants them? And people like lining up.
Oh no, people were. Yeah, I mean those things. I checked eBay after I got back. A lot of them are going for $50. Oh
my God.
$50, $80 for a single pin. It's madness.
God.
But yeah, they have so much to do down there. You kind of have to roll with the punches, and going to do story time with Wyatt was a big thing on my list, so I did do that. And it's like it's just endless, and you could really find anything to do at any time. Even if you just bumped into somebody. When I got off the plane, I thought I had heard some people maybe talking about games, across the way. So when we're waiting, we taxied up to the gate after we landed, and everybody's getting their bag down and stuff. And I was like, so does anyone here go to BlizzCon? There was not a person in a 3-seat radius of me who was not going to BlizzCon. So there were a couple of guys that were just like, yeah, hey guys, you want to share a cab? And I was like, hey, listen, like, don't pay $150 for a cab. Like, I have a rental car. Toss me $20 for gas, I'll take you. I'm going that way anyway. So
nice.
it's a just crazy experience.
Nice.
Did you fly to LAX or John Wayne?
LAX.
Yeah, a little further that way, but good enough. Probably easier to get a flight there than to Anaheim, but
yeah, it ended up being cheaper, especially if you want to be able to drive around to get to where you're going.
Yeah, okay, we're discussing airports to fly to BlizzCon.
Yeah.
Probably should get back on topic a little here. So the most important question I had for Wolfpack, he didn't have a good answer for it, but if the zombie apocalypse began while you were at the Anaheim Convention Center, which games fans would you kill first?
I think I would probably start with the Heroes fans. If I had a kill switch and it was like, okay, well, the danger is real, but you can mitigate it by killing one set of the fans. You hit this button, they all collapse, and those are not going to be zombies. I go with them because they're both rabid and competitive, and in much better shape than the other fans.
Yeah, well, that's not saying a lot of BlizzCon.
No, it's not.
The theory was if they all become zombies, who do you kill first? But I guess World of Warcraft fans are already slow motion shambling.
They're already.
You couldn't really tell a difference.
Yeah, it's like World of Warcraft fans, like that's me. It's like, okay, well, we got a couple extra years on us, got some poundage on us, but then you look at the Heroes fans. And, a lot of them are, like, young Korean guys.
They're, like, twitchy 16-year-old Asian kids.
Yeah. I'm doomed if they come after me. So I'll start with them, I think.
Okay, so you're approaching it in a strategic method. I approve of your answer. Wolfpack was like, I don't know. Everyone's turn. It's funny you mentioned all the art stuff because I've been trying to get Holy Knight to go, who does all the fan art and all the wallpapers on our site forever.
Sure.
And he's never gone to BlizzCon, and he lives like out in like some godforsaken state like Idaho or Iowa or Oklahoma or something like that. And he's never been to California. He never gets to go anywhere. He works like some crappy fast food job. And I'm like, dude, you got to get to BlizzCon.
Yeah, he's got to get the hell out of there.
Because he loves the art. He would just be like the art show all day. He would just love it.
Oh yeah,
I kept telling him, dude, start saving up. Just save like $20 a month until next year. You'll have enough money for take a freaking Greyhound if you have to get there. Whatever.
I spent entirely too much time pestering a UI UX designer. If you're listening, you know who I am. Hello and thank you, and I'm sorry. But yeah, just all of the art people out there, and their headhunting crew is incredible. Because Blizzard's a huge company. They don't have their working artists. It seems to me doing the actual interviews. They have art directors and hiring managers, but they know their stuff like you wouldn't believe. So chatting with one of those guys was amazing because he can see everything that's right or wrong with your art, the second that he opens your portfolio. But yeah, he should go. Absolutely, he should go.
What do they think of Pugacorn? Did I get you a job or no?
The guy liked the Pugacorn. Wasn't his favorite piece, but I do need to rely less on color to denote material. So that was what I learned from.
Well, there you go. Probably adequate feedback. So in 6 months, when we see a new Hearthstone card and it's like a Pugacorn, you'd be like, God damn it, they stole my shit. They took my Skype avatar for...
At that point, I would probably be, blackmailing them for a job because, it'd be like, listen, I will sue you for the rights to this thing, or you can just hire me.
Okay, so any final BlizzCon top questions for him, MJinSpace, before we get on to the patch 2.4 stuff?
No, not really. Other than, what's the fun of killing zombies with a button? I mean, come on. The whole point is that you have a chainsaw or a shotgun with infinite bullets, and you just blow. I mean, come on. That's the whole thing. You're supposed to kill zombies in these horrible ways that you could never get away with.
Did
killing
you really
a person.
On a Diablo 3 podcast just ask what the fun of killing zombies with a button is?
Yes. We're not talking about a game. We're talking about a real zombie apocalypse here. If I have to kill zombies, it's going to be
real zombie
gruesome.
apocalypses.
It's going to be. I'm going to do things in the most vicious, horrible way possible. I'm not going to push a damn button unless I can watch.
This was pure survival instinct.
Okay.
I gotta look out for number one.
You're reminding me of the early South Park episode where they had the zombie apocalypse based on Worcestershire sauce, and they had to cut Kenny in half with a chainsaw, in slow motion. And he's like, it took 30 seconds to cut him in half, laterally. Then he had to cut Wendy in half, and it was the most gruesome, horrible slow motion way possible. It's yeah, there you go.
There you go.
So, a couple of things before we get to the 2.4 stuff. There were a couple of interviews from BlizzCon. Very few have shown up online yet. It's kind of disappointing. That was something Wolfpack was pissed about. He was hanging around the press room, hanging around the Slaughtered Calf Inn. We should just call it the Slaughtered Cafe, I think, in person, personally.
Sure.
Because that would really make a better sound. But so the Slaughtered Cafe, and he was trying to get interviews, and they were like, no, there's no developers available. Meanwhile, you're over there hugging Wyatt Cheng's ankle, like Stan Van Gundy on Alonzo
I made
Mourning.
a total nuisance of myself. I'm not even going to lie.
But anyway, they were saying there weren't many interviews, and then of course there's been very few of them showing up. But one of them that did show up was by Quin, who's Quin69, who's one of the number one monk player in the world. And he did an interview with Wyatt Cheng and the zombie form of Rob Foote, who never spoke once in the entire interview that I could see. But he asked really good questions. In the past, I've been a little bit, I think, deservedly critical of some. Blizzard keeps promoting streamers just ferociously, and they've had some streamers do interviews with them and stuff, and they've had them on the Play Your Way Thursday and stuff. And the streamer's I love the game. The game's awesome. That's my question. The game is awesome. Why are you guys so awesome? It's okay, great, awesome questions. Just journalism 101.
Real hardballs, yeah.
But Quin asked really good questions. I mean, he wore his ridiculous little tight jeans, so maybe they were entranced by the outline of his nutsack. But but he's European, so they don't really know any better than that.
He's a Kiwi. Okay, that's allowed.
Okay, same thing. So anyway, but he asked some really good questions, and I was fairly disappointed, and so were most people in comments, where Wyatt was just. I mean, the Blizzard guys dodge, avoid, evade questions when they don't have good answers. So the question is why is there this horrible crippling lag that's ruining the season? And Wyatt's we're doing optimizations, and if you guys play on the PTR, it helps. It's that's been 3.5 months of crippling, season-destroying lag, and you're telling me you're optimizing it with one skill for the Witch Doctor, right?
Sure. But
Quin did ask some pretty good answers. So did you guys check out the interview, and were you satisfied with the answers? And I mean, I don't know what we're expecting a developer to say. It's our technical infrastructure for the game is 8 years old, and it really kind of sucks, so it gets overloaded by too much stuff happening.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. I mean, I come from an IT background, so I did not watch the interview, but I can tell you, in fact, if I had to backtrack and talk about some things I've listened to in your other podcasts that your other guests didn't bring up, I won't get into that now, but I'm going to say that with the level of play and the level of activity you're seeing in fights now, which things are way crazier in the game than they were when it first came out, what's happening in the background for that to occur, it's no surprise that there's the level of lag that's been occurring in the game. I mean, you have to retool your entire system, and the whole conversation that they've had about, you don't need more stash tabs. The reason they keep saying that is because they know that DB calls, especially with bots making absurd amounts of DB calls would cripple the game, and they had to totally retool their system before they would even allow anyone to get more stash tabs. So it's a big conversation, and there's a bunch of stuff they probably don't even want to talk about happening in the background. But yeah, there's good reason why there's lag, and there's good reason why you need to basically spend a bunch of money to upgrade stuff, and you have to rethink how you've written specific parts of code to fix it. Yeah. So it's an interesting topic, but it's not the most fun one to talk about on a podcast about a game.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of his questions were very technical in nature. I think the thing is, and I'm going to go ahead and collect my check at this point in the podcast. There were two things I think that went wrong in that interview, and the first was that he was asking these kinds of questions to the wrong person. Sure, Wyatt is a huge force in the game, but in terms of being able to talk about how their server infrastructure works and how they plan on, say, upgrading or fixing that or changing code and that kind of thing, he's not equipped to do that. He's not even a community manager who might have a broader set of information on a broader set of topics. So if you want to talk to him about how the Thorns build is going to work for Crusaders, I'm sure he's totally your man. But if you want to ask him about hey, there's botting, how are you fixing the botting, I'm sure all he can really give you is the kind of the company byline, and the other issue was that there are some significant technical difficulties with the game at the moment, and I do sympathize with people who feel like it's ruining their season. That it's a problem. I get that. The problem is that when you come and you ask these questions from a developer, they if they had a solution for this stuff, they probably would have mentioned it already. It would have been in the press release. And at some point, you have to come to grips with the fact that there are going to be problems with this game at any one time that Blizzard hasn't come up with a solution for yet. One that doesn't wreck the game in some other way. It's like, if it's all netcode, let me just play offline. Okay, well, now you have hackers, Yeah. So they've got to be very careful about what they do. And I think that the problem is that, that there are things that they sometimes don't have an answer to. And I think, unfortunately, botting specifically, and also probably, to a lesser extent, lag from this season, are two of the things that they just haven't figured out yet. And botting is really stumping them. I would have thought that they'd have something so far for it, but they're working on it. I know that they are, so it's just going to be, it'll be ready when it's ready, I guess.
And on top of that, you know what? Even if they have an answer, botting and database scaling and those sorts of things are not fun topics. Particularly, they can be interesting, like mathematical and technical challenges for people that are into that, but for a developer that's thinking about like how to design their game and how to make changes, it is not a fun topic. So
no. It doesn't have to be. I mean, they can give you a quick answer if they have one, but they just don't. And I think at some point you have to give them, a little bit of, I don't know about slack, but, you just have to recognize the fact that this is a live game, and there are things that they haven't fixed about it yet. There's always going to be something to work on. There's
always going to be something. I mean, no one's happy all the time with everything in the game. I know I'm certainly not, but overall, I think most of us we're still playing it, so we must like something about it.
That said, I want them to fix it. I mean, it is taking longer than I would have hoped. It's just, at this point, we have to come to terms with the idea that, they're doing it, they're doing their best, but they haven't gotten a solution just yet.
Yeah.
Another thing that the Blizzard people will never do in interviews is throw other people on the team under the bus,
Absolutely.
Even if it's their fault. So, like, people are always asking, why can't we get better UI display? Why can't we show more, show all the icons, etc.? And they're not going to be like, well, the game infrastructure, or why can't we have better, like, player mods or this kind of stuff? And they're like, well, the game was built without this functionality, and we just can't tack it on in 1 second.
Yeah.
And we have lots of programmers who are working on other projects, and they really can't get to
it.
Yeah,
well, they're not going to be like, well, Jason does most of the UI work in that area, and Jason's wife just had a baby, so he's on paternity leave. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
It's like, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, they're not going to admit that they can't do something. They're going to be like, well, we have a larger scheme for how we want to do this, and we want to show the important icons and not show the unimportant icons.
Yeah.
Which is true, but that's not, maybe that's not why they can't do it in the next 2 weeks, because they don't have the programmers. They're working,
well, and
they're a finite resources.
You could have infinite programmers, unless you had infinite programmers, any company has priorities. And they sit down and think about what they want to work on with what they have. And they also think about what matters to them. I mean, something that I think the regular player doesn't get is you have to follow an artistic vision when you make any kind of game. Right, and that isn't always going to make your players happy, but it's more important that you stick to an idea of what you're trying to get done than always just absolutely catering to what the players want. Otherwise, you're going to lose course, and your game could become something that is really bad in the long term. It's just a basic design theory, right? It spans all sorts of artistic things. So they're never going to do everything the players want. End of rant.
It's because they hate us, right? Because Blizzard hates Diablo 3.
Yeah. Although that's a whole other topic of, I mean, and you've talked about it on previous podcasts, which is,
we'll get into it in just a minute.
Okay, there you go. Yep.
So another interview that came up touches on a lot of stuff that Tier was able to check on at the show, and it was a brief mention of an interview with Josh Mascara, and the guy in the interview quotes Josh basically saying that, here I'll quote what the actual thing said, is, when discussing how to monetize after Reaper of Souls, it was Mike Morhaime, who is the Blizzard CEO, that told the team to just release the stuff for free.
Yeah.
Mike apparently said that it was about winning back the hearts and minds of fans who were disappointed with the original release. So we've been debating this on the podcast for months and months. Why are we still getting all this free content and patches? What happened? Why are we not getting Stash for Cash like in China? Does all this constant free content and patches mean that we're not going to get an expansion set? And we kind of debated this last week on the podcast with Wolfpack, and my thinking was that if we haven't seen expansion 2 yet, and we keep getting tons of free content and patches, we're probably never going to get it.
Right.
And Wolfpack was like, no, I don't agree with that. There's still lots of artists working on the game. There are level designers. It's not just like 3 guys tweaking the stats on sets. Maybe they're working on some bigger stuff. Maybe they're just delaying it because there's so many other Blizzard games coming out in the next few months. Or, like this interview thought, maybe they're still trying to win over the hearts and minds, and they're putting out all this free content and improving the game, and maybe they're waiting another year or two, and then people have really sort of, the initial disappointment of Diablo 3 Vanilla, people have kind of forgotten what they were so pissed off about 4 years ago. Did you talk to the devs any about continuing ongoing content here? Did you get a sense of if they're planning on something bigger? Are we going to get free patches forever?
Yeah. So,
and have you let Wyatt Cheng out of your attic yet?
Yeah. So I did get I got a sound bite, basically on this from Wyatt. Same from Josh Mascara. But I got more information again from Alex, who's the person who I spoke the longest to. And by information, I just mean more of their views. It's interesting that this story about how Mike Morhaime literally, I guess, walked into a boardroom or something, and they were like, "Well, how do we do this?" And he's like, "Just put it out for free." Was what I heard to start with. So I think they kind of had their story straight on that. But as far as winning over hearts and minds, I'm pretty sure they've already done that. I think Reaper has been running so well for so long at this point that they've definitely repaired the damage done. I think for most of their dedicated player base. What Alex did add to this, which I thought was really, really interesting, was he says this is about legacy.
Is that the expansion for Hearthstone?
Right. This is not just about fixing, what may have gone wrong with the game on the vanilla launch. It's not just about making a good game and continuing to support it because Blizzard just does that and it's part of their vision. This to the D3 team is a lot about the legacy of the game, and the fact that they still support D2, and up to, a couple years ago they were doing patches to it and that kind of stuff. I don't know if they're still doing that. I think they might be. But, they want this game to have the shelf life and the legacy and the reputation that D2 does. So I think they're likely
and that they want all Blizzard games to have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're likely to support it for a good long time. The other thing that he said was that, Blizzard, they're constantly cognizant of this idea that you can make a deposit to your fan base, or you can make a withdrawal from them. The idea that, if you are trying to foster their goodwill and their loyalty and, have them play your games and have fun constantly, you can either be putting money into the bank on that or you can be taking it out. And it's not like you can operate in a way that means that you never are making withdrawals. The auction house was one of those withdrawals. And it's not intentional. Hopefully you're never taking that goodwill away from your players intentionally. Hopefully it's just an aspect of game design and building these things and them being AAA titles that sometimes you make a choice that, it works out to be against the game. It doesn't work the way that you had hoped it would and the player base doesn't like it. So if at all possible, they are constantly in a state of wanting to, be making deposits, earning brownie points with their fans, so that they're always in a huge net positive on these things. So I think that's probably a good part of what they're doing. And the other thing is, honestly, I think that this game still has a lot of life in it. And I don't just mean that in terms of free patches. I think that there should be and is likely to be more content for this game. Now is just not a good time for it. I mean, the companies, they released StarCraft, the last expansion, just after after BlizzCon closed. Same thing with a new expansion for Hearthstone. Overwatch is going to be coming next year. World of Warcraft's expansion is coming next summer. They've got so much going on. I feel like they just didn't have the time and the manpower for it right now. But it's going to happen. I can't support that with verifiable fact, but I think it's going to happen.
Now wait a minute. Let me ask a really blasphemous question here. I think
that's my job.
Do we really need another expansion? I mean, what if they just keep making slight tweaks to the game where it's at right now? I think the game's in a really good place. And
it is.
It would age, and obviously you'd lose players slowly, but I think that's going to happen anyway. If we were not to get another expansion, could we be happy? Could both of you be happy with where the game is basically at right now?
Yeah, I'll let you answer that first, Flux, if you want to.
I want, I guess, well, if you look back at the previous expansion, that came out right after Diablo 3 version 2, when they totally reworked, the item stats.
Yeah.
They changed around that's when we got smart loot.
That's when things got a lot better.
Yeah, so if expansion number 2 is just Act 6 and a Necro Druid and a new tile sets, I don't care.
Right.
If it's a whole major reworking, much smarter, more interesting item stats, if they put, I don't know, I mean, I'm not really advocating this, but something like, hard caps on crits, so you'd have to have other item modifiers.
Sure.
If it was something, the whole point in expansion to me is you can make major game changes that you wouldn't just put in a content patch. You can't totally change the way sets work or something in a content, because then it breaks the game for everybody currently playing it.
Right.
But you can put that in an expansion, because then people are, they have the option of not buying the expansion, except that all their friends will buy it and they'll be left all alone. Like, there's some guy still playing, Mists of Pandaria, wondering where everybody else went, right? But my thinking is, if they do a really major change and they want to really, shake up the game in some massive ways, that's why I would like to see an expansion. And maybe they're just concentrating on making Diablo 4 instead, or maybe they're all working on Hearthstone. Who knows? But
sure.
Yeah. So if it's just like a double-sized patch, I don't care. But I would like to see some major changes made. I'm sure some of them I wouldn't like as much as others, but. Yeah, so that's kind of, I mean, I'm restating myself here, but yes. So what do you think?
Well, I would say, and I absolutely agree with that point, and I think to add to that, if they are going to go ahead and add kind of major substantive changes to the game, my 2 cents on that would be that probably GRs are where it's needed. I think they're the best and the worst thing in the game right now, and probably the most problematic. And I actually, in talking to some of the devs, they did kind of agree with the idea that it was a bit of a Pandora's box. Once you added this infinitely scaling difficulty, the game was never the same again. And there were really amazing things that came out of that, and there were some things that came out of that were not so great. So they have to deal with that now. So, do we want more? Obviously, we want more. I would agree with Flux that if they're going to do an expansion, they need to make substantive changes, not just add another class and make some new areas or that kind of thing. That being said, I think there is a lot to say for the idea that we will continue getting these rather substantive season patches.
Yeah.
2.4 is pretty impressive.
Pretty nice.
For a while, but eventually that will peter off. And obviously we want to keep getting these things because they're always good, when they come. I mean, the Cube was great, some of the new stuff in this coming season looks amazing. So we want that. But I think if you really want that to continue for a longer duration of time, you need that shot in the arm that is, okay, here's another retail release, or here's a DLC program that gives us some cash flow.
Yeah, cash flow.
Gives us
a
little bit better reason to keep supporting this. I do think that they'll stick with it for a long time, but in terms of how long they do, it is going to be affected by money that they're making or not making from the game. And right. I did, in chatting with a couple of guys, I was like, please, find a way to monetize this game.
Yeah.
Blizzard has been, I think, very conscientious about how they monetize their games. I think Heroes is in a pretty darn good place on how they do that game.
Really good place, yeah.
That
they had a model for it.
It feels good,
Yeah.
So they've got a good model for that. I think Hearthstone was well done in that regard as well. It's a game you can play completely for free if you're really dedicated, and a lot of streamers focus just on doing that. Or you can go in and buy a game. So, I would really like them to come up with something that is good and is fair, but that lets me pay them for this game that I play so much, because I do love it. It's really great right now, and I would like them to keep improving on it.
Good answer.
Mm-hmm.
Your check obviously cleared this week, right?
Oh, yeah, we got to that earlier.
Okay, good. So, what do you think about a possible expansion? I mean, you're asking us, do we want it? I mean, you were able to talk to the devs some there about continuing content, and we've seen some of these interviews. Did you get a sense of what they're planning long term? Did you get any secret eyebrow raises or winking eyes or?
They've all got pretty good
nudge
faces, I would say. No, I mean, and nothing I can come back and say like, when I said this thing, and then Josh lowered his hand to the table and drew with his finger, he drew EXP2, or nothing like that happened. I do think it is, if not a foregone conclusion, I think it is a likely outcome. These guys are still, one thing I will say that is a good sign for that, they're still charged up about this game. They're still really excited to make it and play it. And maybe nobody is a better example of that than Wyatt. I think Wyatt is the most effervescent about the game, and the one who wants to talk about it all the time. But if, my impressions from how happy and excited they seem to be about doing the Slaughtered Calf, about, having this new content coming out is any indication, I think there's a great chance that we get new content.
Okay, if you're playing the home drinking game, that was effervescent. That is a shot. I'm playing the home drinking game, at least. I'm not sure what the rest of you guys are.
Oh, yeah.
I was.
Definitely. I am.
Okay, well, everyone took a shot then. Okay, cha-ching. So, I guess that's it for my sort of BlizzCon-related or expansion-related questions. Any other topics on that before we get to some 2.4 discussion here at the end?
No, I think the only thing I'll mention is, for any of the D3 guys that may listen to this, I know that Wyatt does occasionally, both a quick thank you for the work that you do and for putting up with me, and also a request, a plea to please keep doing that Slaughtered Calf in each year at BlizzCon. It was, I think, hands down the highlight of the trip for me. I know that people were just in there all the time. They were getting posters signed. It was an amazing experience, incredible atmosphere, and I think that if they don't know this already, or if they haven't heard this already, it was a great experience, and they should continue it going forward.
And then one other thing, they spelled your name wrong on the check, so you need them to reissue
Yes, please.
that.
Also, we've discussed a bonus if I was effusive enough about also take a shot. Yeah.
Effervescent also.
Mm-hmm.
How was the beer in there? Was it like, they have craft beer, or was it like Miller Lite? Like, what were they doing?
Warm and stale.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, they had the standard course and that kind of stuff. They did also have Fat Tire, that kind of stuff.
Oh.
So good beer. And they would do mixed drinks too if you're interested.
Oh.
And it was all free for real Diablo players to drown your pain.
Yeah, if you it was 60 million gold for a beer.
Which is the same price as one of the new enhanced Greater Rifts, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Which, by the way, okay, so actually I did have one other thing. Sorry. The enhanced rifts look interesting. That gets expensive. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up with that. But one other thing that I did spend a good bit of time talking about with one of the devs was the legendary gems to enhance ancient items ability. I forget what they're calling that. Augment, yeah. So item augmentation via gems. That seems to me to be a very, very grindy process. I mean, especially with the fact that if you can upgrade them, and this game is constantly about being able to put the best thing you can get into all of your gear, and it's about those little incremental improvements. That means that if you're working your way up, you started you were speed clearing 50s in a group, and now you're speed clearing 60s. Well, all of a sudden, if you go from 60 to 61 and you really want to be maxed out, you've got to completely level a whole new gem just to do that. To replace one augment on one item, and there are 12 slots in this freaking game. That is a ton of work, I mean, even if you're talking augmented rifts, say you just want a level 50 gem in each of your items. That means that you need to, if you're running rifts that are 100% every time, it's going to take you, let's see here, 15 GRs to get one item up to level 50. Something like that, which means that you've got one level 50 gem you can put into one of your gear slots, and then you've got to do the same thing over and over again for all the other slots.
So you got to upgrade, and then you got to do it again? Is that the deal?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Yeah, exactly. So, and then if once you've got all of your slots augmented, then if you want to make an improvement, say now you're running Greater Rifts 5, levels above where you were, you could conceivably get gems 5 levels above where you were. Then, if you really want to be maxed out, you're doing that process all over again for each gem to replace that augment.
Or if you find the new item that's better than the one you had, even with the augment,
right,
you get to do it again.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that feature. It's a little bit like when you're putting in constant features that are just for people who are playing like 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like, for people who have all these extra unnecessary level 50 legendary gems, here's a new feature for you. But the problem is that becomes like the new, that's the standard now.
Baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people like us who have like jobs and lives and are playing like 10 hours a week sometimes, if that. It's like, wait, now I'm supposed to have a level 50, I'm supposed to throw away level 50 gems to add a little bit of stat to my armor?
Yeah, so...
It's like, really? Or else I suck?
That was Wyatt's, that feature apparently is Wyatt's baby. He was the one who was working on it. And so, I didn't get a chance to ask him about it. I did get a chance to ask Josh about it. And the answer was, okay, well, we're still working on this stuff. But I was like, I'm concerned about this. That is my feedback. Please take my feedback. At bare minimum, if you're going to go that route, let me have on the gem upgrade screen for Urshi, a list of all of my gear, and I can use one of my gem upgrade chances to put another 5, plus 5 strength onto an item, at the same chance that it would be.
That would be nice.
That would, I think, alleviate the issue just a little bit, because right now it is so much extra work, it's crazy.
But you get 4 upgrades in the augmented dungeons if you have extra gold to spend on that.
Don't you just get a chance at an augmented upgrade? It's like an RNG roll for 60 million gold or something like that.
No, you get the extra roll. It's just each roll has a percentage chance on.
Yeah, success or failure.
So
the odds
if your
aren't better
gem
on the
was a low level, and you're running a considerably greater level GR, you would get 4 upgrades out of it. It would be 100% each time.
Guaranteed. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but so in the same time it would take you to get a level 30 gem, you can get a level 40 gem,
Right.
if you have all the gold to spend on that. So again, there, more the rich get richer, or actually the rich get poorer, but get richer in the process of getting poorer.
Yeah.
Metaphorically speaking. That made perfect sense, didn't it? Okay, good. So getting on to the patch 2.4 stuff, none of us have had much PTR time, but we're obviously following the changes. And so the new set items, there's a lot of changes. Some of the older sets were upgraded. We mentioned the set dungeons earlier. Yeah. And the one example we've seen a lot of is the new Demon Hunter melee set. Mm-hmm. Any of the other older set changes you guys are really interested in, or even that one for the Demon Hunter? But what classes are you playing a lot lately, and anything you're going to try new with the new sets in 2.4?
Go ahead,
I'll take that for. Oh, okay. Well, much like NerdWords is a wizard freak, I'm a Demon Hunter freak, so that's the first class that I really looked at carefully, and I'm pretty. The new set, it looks interesting. And it may be viable with all of the changes they're making to damage reduction. Like they're putting a lot more damage reduction in the game overall, and that's kind of their answer to the infinitely scaling greater rifts, obviously. So it may be a useful set, but it being a single target set the way it is, kind of with Impale, I don't know how great it's going to be. But in any case, that looks interesting. I'm really glad Marauders is coming back as a viable set, because I personally do not like Unhallowed. I don't like the way it plays, and that it makes you just basically stand there. And the way Marauders plays is it made you basically were dodging around to stay alive, and then once you were in a safe position, then you bursted down a monster before running away some more, which is how you have to play as a squishy class. So Unhallowed basically sets you up to fail, because it was designed the game was inherently designed around, like, you either tank damage or you don't tank damage, and you die, but you can never do that with the Demon Hunter or like the Wizard. So like that set doesn't work. So I'm really glad that Marauders is going to come back. The new set might be interesting. As far as other classes go, obviously I still like playing the Monk. It's a really fun class, so I'm glad with some of the changes that are going in there, like especially to a bunch of stuff in there. I don't need to keep going on and on.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
The upgraded Sun Woku was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I got a bit of time. That was the only class I actually played at BlizzCon, was a Sun Woku Monk.
Did you get to play the new tile sets and stuff? And that was where the whole demo was set.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I was arguing with Wolfpack about that. He's like, it's all this like awesome, like this wild area with just like animals.
Yeah, it's very
designers
much
were thinking
like.
Yeah, but he just
go ahead.
But he was saying like the designer's idea was this is like an uninhabited area. Like, what if there was no humans? And then he's like, and there's like ruined castles and bridges. I'm like, well, who built the bridges and castles?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like a place that you see any humanoid mobs. It's attractive for sure. It actually felt to me like almost like a touch of the Amazonian Isles. What were the name of the isles? I forget.
Scovos.
Yeah, because it is kind of it's like a forlorn isle or whatever the name is. And then there's a cave tile set related to that has like big old monster crabs trying to eat you and stuff like that.
Giant enemy crabs are attacking.
Yeah.
Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, there are enemy crabs. You'll be battling crabs in real life and in the game if you're anything like any of the players of this game.
If you're doing dating at BlizzCon, you'll definitely be battling crabs.
Yeah, absolutely. But they look great, and I like the monsters that they chose. You've got Rat Kings. You've got those Wicker Men that I think were only used like one other place in the game before. Those are
in an Act 5 where no one's ever seen.
Yeah, those are showing up in packs now, which is kind of fun. But yeah, it's a nice area. It's got a different feel than any of the others. It feels a little bit more natural, a little bit more. I don't want to say less dark and dreary because it's still dreary, but it feels a little bit more like an uninhabited nature area as opposed to death and destruction and torture and mutilated souls and the whole biz. So it's cool. I'll say, to answer your question about classes, I have, since Reaper launched, I have had a constant and abiding love for the Crusader. And they are actually getting some fun new stuff here, coming up. So Invokers is looking pretty good. Folks are saying that they're clearing 70s solo on Invokers.
Nice.
That looks pretty interesting. And then I'm sure I won't go too much into it because it's I think something else that we'll be talking about. But the Legacy of Nightmares set has re-enabled a Captain America shield toss build that someone's clearing 90s with on the PTR.
That'll be nerfed.
Yeah,
I'm sure they won't allow that.
It looks like it already has been, but that looked like so much fun. I think Crusaders actually have a lot of really fun class items that they don't get to use, especially in terms of like flails that change the way their abilities work, I mean, you used to have the old Shotgun Crusader, that was using a particular flail that would triple beams. You've got the Gyre Falcon's Foot, which lets you throw those shields. You've got, all kinds of different stuff. So I think they're going to benefit a lot from that Legacy of the Nightmares set once they decide what the tuning is supposed to be on that.
Yeah, well, that was the big. We had a little bit of that on the podcast last week, where the initial screenshot during the panel showed 75% damage bonus. So just backtrack us. I mean, it's the two rings that no one uses now. The Legacy of Nightmares set, and currently the bonus in the game now is like Magic Find is like 15%. It's like woo.
Yeah, woo.
So they changed the set. So if you're wearing both rings, then every ancient item in your gear gives you a bonus to your damage, as long as you don't have any other set bonuses. So you can't use a 6-piece set or even a 4 or a 2-piece set. You've got to basically use all legendaries or sets, but you just can't have any other set bonuses at all. Yeah. And in the panel, they showed a slide showing the 75% damage. People were like, meh. And then when the patch went live on the PTR, the picture said 800% damage, which just seemed like a ridiculously larger number. Yeah. And people were immediately just finding this just the most ridiculously overpowered thing in the world. Uh-huh. And then like a day after the patch went live, Wyatt Cheng posted this long explanation of how now it's 100% damage.
Yeah.
And people were like, the answer could pretty much, the general fan reaction was just WTF.
It's like, really, just don't jerk us around quite so much, maybe.
Yeah, like you put this live and like the next day you cut it by, from 800% to 100%. It's like, did you not think? And Wyatt's like, we like to put like crazy numbers. Basically, it was bait and switch.
It really was.
We put this ridiculous number to get you guys to all try it out really quickly, and then we knew it would be over the top. We're just going to change it immediately.
That was exactly
what it was. Guys, how about you just start low and go higher? Maybe you could do. I mean,
because then nobody tries it. So
yeah,
we had the same thing with the Whirlwind set like 2 patches ago. Remember, it was like 500% damage buff with like 6 pieces. Not the Whirlwind set. The other, whatever the other Barbarian set was. I'm forgetting the details at this point.
The IK set. Which one?
Yeah, it was I think it was like the 6-piece bonus for the set went from like, it was like a 500% damage bonus.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then everyone was like getting used to this, and it's like, oh my god, it's so overpowered. And then they cut it to 100% like right before the patch went live.
Yeah.
And they were kind of the same thing. Like we wanted to get you guys to try it. We had to make a really attractive bonus.
Yeah.
We like to make things super crazy.
I think 400%.
And at least that's when they cut it the
really
first
attractive.
day of the PTR.
Like 250% would be really attractive, and then it wouldn't feel quite so bad when they cut it by a quarter as opposed to, cut it an eighth and let it go from there. It was weird.
Like, why didn't they make it like 8,000% if they really wanted to get people attracted to it?
Right.
It's a little bit like the whole legendary drop thing on the PTR, where it's 2,000%, where essentially every elite drops at least one legendary. And it's like, they don't do that and then say, okay, we're going to drop it to 1,000%, so every other elite will drop a legendary. It's like, if you're doing a real number, do a real number. If you're just doing some like promotional thing to make us go crazy and have fun, then do that. But anyway, so the current state of the Legacy of Nightmares is 100% damage bonus per ancient item.
Yeah.
And people are not going to be doing level 90 greater rifts with Captain America builds now.
Well, actually they might, because if you get enough ancient items, that's still a pretty significant buff, right? But it's just going to take a while to, unless you're like play this game continuously and have all ancients already. It's going to take
people that are importing their characters to the PTR have all ancients already.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
So the question is, can you increase that number enough to where it will compete with the amount of damage bonuses out of the sets? Because I think 100% is not going to cut it.
Yeah, well, but I guess that brings up another question, which is that if they did it that way, I would actually much rather see a scenario where it's a little weak to start, and then if they buff it in another patch up to make it slightly stronger, then it simply becoming the de facto best. And I've ranted on other podcasts about what overpowered is and why certain things in the game are totally OP and they push everything else out of being viable. I would much rather have all the sets continue to be viable through the patch, and then that get buffed up slowly until it's good enough that some people start adopting it and it's an option. So if I had to pick one, I definitely would pick that. It's kind of my on it.
Sure, I agree.
And I guess we'll see how the PTR goes. But it's funny that the first day of it, basically like the second day of the PTR, like, hey, we're cutting this by 700%. So
yeah, and I also want to add because one of the other things that really got me excited in this patch is that they went back and gave a legendary bonus to a bunch of the red items or orange or whatever that didn't have anything, that were just like stupid drops. And so there's actually a massive amount of permutations in the game now that weren't there before. So for that to be that powerful with all these other kind of unknown question marks occurring at the same time, that's actually really dangerous, right?
Yeah,
you could get something crazy.
I want to shout out to the what I'm now going to refer to as the Tequila Cuirass. It's a chess piece. They added a really nice bonus to it. So now when you are near your top resource, so it'll say, if you're over 84% or something like that, you'll earn, I think it's like 40% damage reduction or something crazy like that, which is huge. And especially on chests, there's not a lot of great options for chests. I think that thing's going to see a lot of use.
Yeah, high-level GRs, that's a big, big, big difference.
And giving you an incentive to use a build where you're not always out of resource. So
sure, yeah. Of course, then they're also doing things like, they broke Whirlwind, so now I can't Whirlwind through everything and also get 40% damage reduction.
Yeah, which ties into the whole, they're saying Whirlwind just does so many calculations with so many hits per second that it was, causing massive lag.
Yeah,
so.
They gotta do what they got to do.
I think which means that they decrease the frequency that it hits at, which means that you're not regenerating as much wrath back through your passive, like Weapons Master. The trick to that is, then just reduce the cost of Whirlwind.
Yeah.
It's not hard. If it hits less often, but it does more damage, that's fine. I don't think anyone has an issue with that as long as it approximately evens out. But now if people are having resource issues, just make it cost less. That's fine.
Yeah. And to backtrack to a second, back to the Curios, that's a direction that I really want to see more legendaries in the game go, which is that you get something really, really good, but there's a big trade-off for it.
It's based on your play style, or it affects or changes your play style. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
You have to, this bonus is game-changing, but to get it, I have to figure out how I'm going to put out the damage using maybe like a primary attack or pull off some neat set of tricks to be able to use enough of my other skills that actually require resources and still put out the damage. So I get something awesome, and I have to figure out how to make it work. That's
neither
how
I have to deal with that while playing or, bare minimum while gearing.
Yeah. And the whole just, this is massively overpowered, and then, oh, wait, this is even more massively overpowered, so this is the one I should use. That is a style that I don't like, and I think that up to this point, quite frankly, due in large part to massive amounts of tears from the fan base, hasn't been done particularly well. Yeah, I mean, like Path of the Exile has a ton of amazing. I don't play that game very much anymore, but when I did, it has tons of amazing like legendary unique items that do just that. They do something awesome, but then they hit you in some way that you have to figure out how to work around to get that power out of it. So hopefully this is a route that they keep adjusting and improving on in D3.
Yeah, and more classes needed more damage reduction options.
Yeah, real. I mean, obviously the Barbarian doesn't need it, but like I was saying earlier, all the squishy classes, man, they need it really bad.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the Legacy of Nightmares ring set is that it enables you to use more of these, unusual legendaries that no one was using because they
Yeah.
were conflicting with their 6-piece set option.
Sure.
Yep.
So we've had that debate many times on the podcast recently. You know, now every top build in the game before this patch requires a 6-piece set, and then most of those have 2 or 3 or 4 other legendaries that you have to use with it.
The build is set in stone.
There's a belt, or there's pants, or there's bracers, or something that you absolutely have to pair with it.
Yep.
And now Legacy of Nightmares not only gives you the option to do something different, it requires you to do something different to get the bonuses, because you can't use any other sets with it.
That's really, really good.
I think
that's like a real way to open up more build options.
My only odd complaint about the Legacy is that it's really strange to tie that to ancient items, to me.
That is true.
Especially since I feel like this would be, a kind of a set that a lot of people who haven't played heavily at the top levels in Endgame could really get into.
Yeah.
Because it means that they don't need to look up a build online. They can equip the items and then try out a whole bunch of different things. I think it's a little bit of a shame that it requires you to have this litany of ancient items. Otherwise, it literally just doesn't work. I would be much happier if they had just settled on a percentage, and said, okay, if you're not using any other sets, you get this damage bonus. Because honestly, you're not going to use it without like a full set of ancients anyway.
That's
I
true.
mean, maybe if you're one down or something. So it seems like an odd artificial barrier to entry that kind of keeps more people from using it. And it's a really neat set, and I think it will be very good for the game, but I wish it just wasn't tied to ancients in such a strange way.
Yeah, just tied to legendaries more than it was tied to ancients.
Sure, yeah.
But everybody has 100% legendaries by the time they find anything at this point. So how would that even matter? I mean, obviously the point now is to encourage you. It seems almost like it's one of those seasonal journey things where it's like, okay, here's what you should be doing, and here's your incentive to do it. So, like, you should be trying to upgrade all your gear to ancient items, and even if you find, with this set now, if you find an ancient that's not a perfect roll, you can't enchant it 500 times, whatever, it's still going to be better than an ancient, or a not ancient with a good roll, because you get this damage bonus.
That was already true anyway, so what's your point? Yeah, in the weapon slot it was, and the rest of the slots obviously didn't.
Not only was it already true, but it's probably not a good thing.
I agree.
Probably would rather have more variety, and the rolls on a non-ancient, were really good versus a really poor ancient. I'd probably rather that the game function in a way that you could use the other item. Sure, lots of players are at the level where they're decked out in ancients, but even me, it's like I'm Paragon 550, I'm slacking by a lot of people's standards, but I'm also well ahead of a ton of people by other people's standards.
Yeah.
I don't have a full set of ancients for my set pieces, for instance. It's like not everyone is quite in that boat, and I think there's probably more people in the player population than not who are using 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 ancients, and the rest are just regular legendaries.
No.
But you said the magic word in your set. When you're doing the Legacy of Nightmares, you can't have a set. So
sure, but then that gets down to, it's like, okay, well, there's going to be a build anyway. In this case, there's just a force build, so it's like, okay, well, I can't just put any legendary in there because I need this build to give me the 6-piece bonus. But people are going to end up at a situation now with Legacy of Nightmares where it's like, okay, well, I'm going for this particular build, say that, Crusader Shield build that I mentioned earlier. You're still going to want specific items for that. Some even to the point where, for instance, the Gyre Falcon. Like, if you don't have an ancient Gyre Falcon, that's going to hurt your damage a lot, but you're still at least going to want the Gyre Falcon in there, because otherwise the build just flat out doesn't work.
Doesn't work, yep.
And you're a filthy casual in that case.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to.
You don't have ancient weapons?
I've got one. I've got one Volcathos ancient weapon. I just cannot get the other one to roll ancient.
Maybe they'll add a cube recipe to make that easier.
Yeah, I'm spending mats like nobody's business, too. It's just not happening.
Oh, my God, yeah. We feel you.
It's cool. I got a unicorn. It's fine.
So I should give you guys a chance to opinion on the whole stash space thing. We're finally getting some more stash space. They're adding, you can buy everyone gets an extra tab for gold in this next patch.
Yeah.
and then you're getting one more per season if you do the whole seasonal journey thing with new seasonal characters. The big complaint for people who don't play seasonal is that they don't get that. They're going to have to find someone to like turbo them through seasons.
Sure. Yeah.
But we've been, you guys have been, and everyone else on the podcast for months has been saying this is ridiculous. We need more stash space. They keep adding more stats to save. How can we possibly play this game? We were talking earlier about, infrastructure and programming stuff, which is what the developers will never just admit and say, well, actually, we have a really bad database and we can't handle more stash space.
Yep.
So they're kind of bleeding it out slowly over time to give us something to look forward to.
Right.
So pretending you're ignorant of actual technical issues and you think they can just wave a magic wand and give us all 50 stash tabs if they want to, what do you guys think of the additional stash space, and is it inadequate? Are you totally out of space? Are you making 15 mules per season and deleting all your other characters?
Go ahead.
Well, I'm in the particular situation where, for one, I never really cared about the stash space issue. I think there's more than enough room if you really, want to play this game, even if you're playing on multiple classes, to have a reasonable amount of stuff stored away for other characters. I think the people who run into problems are just having pack rat syndrome. The other thing is, it's just weird to me that they're rolling this out so slowly. There's a limit for one. So this isn't even a situation where they're saying, okay, great, we're going to give you an extra stash tab every season that you complete, because in theory, you'll try to fit all of the stuff from that season that you would want to keep into that extra stash tab. And then you'll kind of have a continuous amount of space to work with because, for each season that you're doing, you're also getting a little more space to deal with the gear from that season. But there's a limit. You can only get 4 of them. So you'll be able to get a 6th stash tab, and then you'll be able to get up to 4 by going through the seasonal objectives. So it just seems like, okay, well, great. Give us a little more space if you really feel like we need it, which I really don't think we do. But if you're doing that, why do this weird rollout? If the only thing I can think of is they're just like, oh yeah, it's a great reward, let's just, dangle a carrot. But it's a little odd to me that they would need to hold off. Like, if you really feel like people should have that space, just unlock it. Don't beat around the bush on it.
Well, I guess I've come from the other direction. So first, let's take the question from the straight non-technical viewpoint, which is, like, for me, I definitely needed that extra space, and it's not a pack rat thing. It is to some extent, but every time that I have gotten an item that is like, man, this rolled crazy good. It's not an item that I think I need right now, but I'm going to hold on to it because this is just so ridiculously good, even though there's no way it should be in the... I'm not using it. I'm just going to hold on to it and see what happens. Every time I have done that with all of these updates that have come out, I have been so glad I did it. Especially with the set items, I'm like, man, this is crazy. It's like the best thing I've ever seen. I have to hold on to this. And then, boom, the set gets upgraded. Like, focus and restraint were like that. Once I was like, oh my god, I'm so glad I held on to that focus. It was just like, yay. So quite frankly, yeah, if you want to keep one of every single really good roll thing you get for your different classes, the amount of space you have right now is just not enough, right? Period, over and out. It just isn't. Yeah, if you throw away stuff because like, oh, I'm not using it right now in the set that's the strongest right now, then you won't need it. But if you just want to hold on to it because it's that good, you do need it. So second, like, if I didn't know anything about technical stuff, then I would just be pissed off about the way they're rolling them out, because I play seasons sometimes, but I may not play all the way through the season, and I may not play every single season based on, work and schedule and stuff like that. So if I didn't know anything else, I'd just be like, okay, this is lame. Why are you doing this? But the truth is, we do know something else. And the first thing we have to talk about outrightly is botting, right? Yeah. Botting is going to happen in the seasons, but it's going to happen a lot less than it would probably happen overall if they just... For all classes. So what they're saying is real actual players are probably going to have to put in real actual time to get all your stash spaces, instead of you instantly get all your stash space. Then every bot instantly is making max DB calls all the time. No, they can roll it out slowly over a set of seasons, look at how much it's affecting their servers, and adjust accordingly and do whatever they need to do. So that's why they did it. They didn't do it. And then on top of that, yeah, it's just like a little extra thing for people to work towards, right? They don't give you all, you don't get the world now. You have to work for it, right? So,
yeah, I don't know how sure we can be that that's the exact reason that they're rolling it out is specifically because of botting. I do think that if that is the case, that's a pretty sad state of affairs, because that would mean that they have a lack of confidence that they'll be able to solve this problem, within a short time frame. Because 4 seasons is a lot of time.
I don't know how much you've dealt with AI and machine learning, but to be quite frank, they'll never fix botting. It's just a fact. It can, because the minute they're going to have an algorithm to help them catch bots, and when they do that, the bots will get kicked, and people will experiment until they figure out how to break the algorithm. And they're going to make a bot that is hard for them to catch or impossible. And then they have to rewrite the algorithm, and it's just this constant, endless game.
Sure, from a technical aspect, I totally agree with you. If you want to fight botting with what you could consider like anti-botting tech, the problem is that that's just like everything else, that's what's the word I'm looking for? It's an arms race.
Right, exactly.
And it's always going to be, they're going to be coming up with new stuff as you go. I think the only way realistically to solve botting, and I don't have a specific plan on how to do this, but I think you have to de-incentivize it through the game mechanics.
Right.
If you set up the game in such a way that botting, it's like, okay, great, well, you ran your computer for 12 hours a day, but did it really help your character all that much? Not really. If you can kind of crack that nut, that's probably the only way you're going to make a big impact on it. You're absolutely right. From a technical standpoint, it can't be solved.
Like this is way out of scope, and so I won't go too far into it. But the only really way that people have figured out how to solve that is to basically have a vicious game where players can kill each other and take their stuff. Because if you bot in a game where other people can find your bot and hose you, no one bots. And outside of that simple tool, and D3's never ever going to have that tool, there is no other way, because D3 is a simple question of RNG times time played equals
power.
Character equals power. Yeah. And that fact of the game will never, ever, ever change, because it's fundamental. It's core to the way D3 is designed. Sure. And since that's the case, if you can bot and increase your time, you're always going to get stuff. So okay, go ahead.
Let me lay this on you. And I spoke about this on the last podcast that I was on. I'm not going to go into super in-depth on it, but there are things that you can do. For instance, I suggested, what if you limited every week the amount of Paragon levels you could gain for the week?
Right.
Maybe you can continue earning the total Paragon, but it only adds to your actual character's power for, every week you get another 50 levels or something like that, even if you're grinding it ahead of time.
Right.
If you get to that kind of point, then the huge incentive there is right now for infinite power, to coordinate directly to time, is less there. Sure, people will still bot. You're not going to stop someone from doing it, because, they'll be like, oh, well, it's not so lucrative anymore, but I still want the items or whatever.
Right. Exactly.
But you'll probably have a great deal of reduction, because the main currency of, power and of success on leaderboards will no longer be tied directly to that time played.
Yeah.
So I think, again, I'm not saying that I have a specific solution for it, but I am saying that Blizzard is an incredibly smart company on game design, and I think they can come up with a way that the botting is, if not eliminated, reduced, and its impact on the overall gameplay is also smaller. So for instance, in a game like World of Warcraft, botting exists. Really all it's there for is making gold. And people want to have gold, but gold doesn't necessarily directly relate to power. So, there are different design decisions you can make, I think, that might impact that in a positive way.
Yeah.
Somebody asked Wyatt about a cap on Paragon points recently, and he said no, we don't want to not reward people for playing more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
and I totally agree with that. I completely agree.
Yeah, again, I don't think that that's a solution, but, something, you have to consider all these different things, and, maybe in a design meeting, somebody says, well, what if we cap Paragon, and they say, well, no, we don't want to do that, but what if, and eventually you'll come up with a solution, hopefully.
Yeah.
And it's, you almost wonder, we mentioned this last week on the show, like, they have the bonuses in World of Warcraft where you gain experience faster if you haven't played for X number of time, and then after a few hours that slows down.
Yeah.
And you wonder if they had something like that in Diablo 3, then maybe people only bought for 3 hours a day instead of 12 hours a day.
12 hours a day.
But it would give people who don't have that much time to play, you wouldn't be falling infinitely far behind.
Right.
But of course, the other main complaint we've had tons of until they're trying to address that in the next patch also is you get vastly more experience in parties now, especially in Greater Rift parties.
Yeah.
And there's almost no rewards for single player. And imagine if single player were equivalent, how is that for your bonding incentive, right?
Wait, guys, I got it. Captchas. What if every hour that you play, the gear and experience that you've collected, including gold, et cetera, is only maintained if you correctly enter a captcha?
I said like 2 years ago, I said, why doesn't Blizzard just put like captchas on game joining? Back when it was game creating, like Diablo 2 botting was all about making really short games and doing Pendle skin runs or whatever. Like, why don't they just have captchas on game creation?
Yeah.
We've had times in Diablo 2 especially where you couldn't create games because there were so many bots creating games. There was they would get these huge queues.
Yeah.
Like, once you were in a game, it was fine, but there'd be like an hour delay to create a game because they only had so many servers dedicated to supporting actual game creation. And so you could play forever, but you just couldn't create a game in the first place because there were so many goddamn botters.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just like, why don't they just do this, 10 years ago? Obviously, that's not something they're planning on doing.
Yeah, so I guess that's the point that I'm making, is not that it's not that I know how to fix this, but that if they're creative, they'll come up with something. We just need to, I guess, have hope and, faith in the company and be a little patient, but I'm hoping they get to it soon. I think it's possible.
Yeah, and I think they're not the only, right, like botting isn't somehow, right, unique to Blizzard games. So,
no.
I mean, people all over the industry are thinking about the exact same problem.
No. But also at the same time, they've got a lot of experience with it. It's been a problem in multiple other games, so that should help, in them thinking about these things in a way that they might be able to come around and fix them.
Right.
Yeah, they failed to deal with botting in 10 games in a row now. They're getting much better
right.
at it.
Yeah, we'll see if they can deal with aimbot and Overwatch, and then we'll go.
Of course. Transparent walls bot and everything else.
Well, they already put it in. That was their solution. They just had aim assist equipped on everybody to start with, and they shut it off. I don't know if you heard about that. It was a big deal. Everyone was like, what's aim assist in here for? And they were turning it on a mouse and keyboard, which makes the game just ludicrously easy. So they had to hotfix it out.
Just cutting out the middleman there.
Yeah, there you go.
So, any other topics you guys want to dig into? We've gone to above our time allotment, but if there's any other exciting points you're dying to get into, and obviously there's a bunch of other 2.4 stuff, but we've already done so much other content here.
No, I mean, I'll stop blathering at you about how great the trip was, but I mean, a quick thanks to you, Flux, for getting back to me and letting me go out. It was amazing, so thank you.
Finally, your podcasting work pays off.
Yeah. Finally, my talking head business is working out.
And your Pugacorn. It was really just the Pugacorn that pretty much won me over.
Okay.
I'm like, who shall I go? Oh, the Pugacorn guy. That's cool. Let him go. MJinSpace, you have a squirrel for an avatar, so you don't get to go anywhere.
Oh, that's true.
You will go. You will go nowhere. You will do nothing.
It's cool. Next year, I'll draw you a squirrelicorn. Ooh, yay!
Awesome. We just pay you in nuts.
Nuts. Anyway, there's, like you said, there's lots of 2.4 stuff to talk about, but you'll have plenty of podcasts for that before it actually gets live. So have fun.
I might actually get to play it myself one of these months.
There you go.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
I remember when I had time for video games. That was great. I was young, carefree. It was like 3 months ago. It was great.
Yeah.
So I guess that's our show for the week. We will hopefully come back next week with some actual PTR testing and some more feedback on some of the new sets and other changes we're getting that's going on in the testing now. And you've been listening to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at diabloii.net. Oh, and I just forgot to mention. I'm hoping to talk to Monstrous next week, who was going to be our other. The reason you got to go basically, Tier, is because Monstrous. No, actually, you were the second choice. You would have gone anyway. The reason Wolfpack got to go was because Monstrous replied first, and he'd been trying to get a BlizzCon pass for months.
Yeah. And
posting on his Twitter and saying, he's been following the game forever. He basically was the guy who invented the orange and green beams. That was a big thing he had months and months ago, where he did a bunch of photoshopped images and said they should be like these, beam me up Scotty,
that's awesome,
glowing things above it, and a bunch of other game ideas. And Blizzard was like, that's awesome, and they put in the game like the next patch. So that's kind of his claim to fame. But he's been making a lot of really interesting, theory crafting ideas. But anyway, he's going to be on the show hopefully later this week or next week. He was going to be on tonight, but he's still in L.A. For some reason, he stayed a week after the show, so maybe he's been touring Blizzard, or he couldn't. His dog sled team ran away. I don't know what the problem was.
he's just going to try to stay there so long that he just ends up getting a job and doesn't go back to Canada.
Goddamn illegal aliens taking all our jobs.
Yeah.
Took our germs!
And then they ran away with all their maple syrup.
So anyway, hopefully Monsters will be on the show either this week or on the next weekend, and we can get another person's first-time take on BlizzCon, plus other patch stuff. So that will be coming up next time, hopefully, and maybe one of you guys can join us, or perhaps not. You've listened to the Diablo 2 podcast, blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 moo.
Moo.
Moo. Were there any cows in the Slaughtered Calf Inn?
No, sadly.
Were there people that exploded and turned into zombies, dude?
That was the first thing I said. I was talking to Josh, and I'm like, you know what this place is really missing?
Dead bodies on the floor.
You really need to have like a sick bed area over there, and then every time someone comes in, they go, "Arr!" and then they get up and chase them up.